speaker, you already met her. She was part of the really engaging panel that we had this morning. So she comes from Acclaim Ability Management with a clear passion for incorporating empathy. That's a big word lately, empathy into the workplace, and how empathy-driven approaches can significantly reduce the financial impact of disability programs. She's an accomplished director of operations at Acclaim with a background in human resources and certification as a mediator. She leads employee services and oversees the long-term disability and clinical service departments. And her expertise extends to supporting various lines of business, specializing in seamless transitions from short-term disability to long-term disability by integrating clinical services early in the process. And she ensures comprehensive support. She is committed to finding resolutions and developing collaborative solutions, making her an asset to Acclaim, consistently contributing to clients' remarkable success. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Christine, and we'll see you back at the end of the presentation. I'll monitor the chats as well from the back.
Thanks, Marty. Thank you very much, too, for the very kind introduction. I know it's the end of the day for most people. I'm pretty sure my presentation won't be the whole hour for you, but this one's for you. It's more about personal equity in everything you're doing as an advisor or out there in the management of benefits for employees at whatever level you're in at. So today I was fascinated by the Bitcoin conversation, and I was grateful to see that Scott, without knowing it, he kind of set the stage for me, because the final thing he was really talking about before the questions came on was, do you really know who your client is? And if, as David said, if you really know your client, you'll know that Bitcoin's a good fit for them. So I'm going to talk along the same realm of that today. And the topic that we're talking about, as Marnie said, is empathy. And it is a word that's used a lot, and I'll get into that in a minute here. And we're going to bring how empathy impacts disability programs and sick leave. So sit back, relax. It's not it's more about you and how you can bring this in as an advisor and where the gains are in the managing the impact of this in the benefits game. So about 7 years ago, I'm going to start with a little story here. About 5 to 7 years ago, I was asked to visit with an employer in person. They are a municipality, and to see if they could use our services. That was my goal when I was going in, was to sell the services we have here at Acclaim. And we are a third-party advisor in the disability management field. So I was going in to see if they could use help with their short-term disability. I had spoken with them on a few occasions about how we could offer tools on a one-off situation that they had. And the director of HR asked if I could come in and meet with her, one of the new heads of department, over a complex situation they had. And so I went to meet with the client, drove down to meet with them, and we sat in a room and we started discussing the complex file. And they gave a lot of history on an individual that had had a lot of struggles in return to work. They went to, I would say, the nth degree to try to bring the person back. The HR director had a lot of struggles with the manager, and the manager who was at the table had a lot of struggles with the employee who wasn't present. And there was a long backstory on how they'd gotten to this situation, which now had cost them the whole duration of their sick leave, already through LTD, return to work plan, separate independent medical evaluations to determine whether somebody could come back to work. And there still wasn't success. The individual still wasn't able to come back to work. And the HR director was pretty thoughtful. And when she finished telling me her story, I asked her one question. And what I asked her is, what would you rather have had happen in this situation? And the HR director said, I would rather the employee felt safe enough to trust us to come back to work in this environment. Okay, so that the person didn't have to worry anymore about the rollout of this accommodation, what it looked like. It was so far gone that there probably wasn't going to be a way to resolve this. The only direction they could go is they did have a new head of the department. And so some of the concerns with the manager they had were no longer there. So what I gave them as a solution after I listened to their problem is I said, we can help with this. And what we did at that time is I suggested they implement the strategy I suggested to them was the psychological health and safety standards back then, because it was something that was going to make a difference. The end story here is they never took us on for their short-term disability benefits, but we did spend the next year and a half implementing the psychological health and safety standards so that they had better employees coming back to work, and so that they knew that the fallout of the benefit program that they had a better effect on the front end. And the reason they were able to do that is because the HR director wanted to take a more empathetic approach to how to resolve this from a bigger picture. Okay, so I wanted to share that with you because as an advisor, everything starts with a human story. The how did we get here theme of this is always about why is the client you're meeting with feeling the way they are, or what is it you're not asking them because all they're talking about is the price. What is it? Why would you think that the price is too much? I mean, if there's value in what they're doing, they're seeing success, nobody's going to tell you they need a lower price. Gosh, I called a client a couple of weeks ago about a rate increase, and she said, Christine, I've been waiting for you to call because I knew that was coming for about a year. I knew that meant the services were good. I knew she wasn't going to be surprised by a price increase. So you can get both. You just have to know your client. So in this 30-minute session, I hope to provide insights into the tangible benefits of empathy. My passion has always been in finding a way forward for my clients and always asking, how did we get here? Today, what I want to walk through in about 35 minutes here will be a little exercise on what's maybe holding you back, understanding what empathy facet we're really talking about here, because there's a few of them. Delve into the financial health and benefits of an empathetic approach, and look at a few high-level case studies, and then bring that all home with a couple really easy questions, strategies to consider. And really what I said at the beginning here was I just want you to get a little personal equity out of the end of the day here. Okay? So I want you to take a moment right now. I want to do a little exercise with you in the next 2 slides, and I'm going to walk you through what that looks like. To bring you into this presentation and to more understand from a personal perspective who you are and whether your approach shows up as an empathetic one each time you meet with your clients, I want you to take a moment and think about the last conversation you had at work with a client or even a coworker that was difficult for you. Okay, so I want you to think about the conversation from your side. Think about the last time something was difficult and what it was you think that was involved. We're going to spend a few minutes here looking at this, but what I want to talk about here is the 7 barriers of success. So there's a theory in business circles called the 7 barriers that block effective leadership. Effective leadership and effective advisement, because that's what advisors are. If you were on the panelist, if you were listening to the panelist topic earlier, you would hear that there was good discussion going on about whether advisors are going to stay or go. Of course, we all believe it's going to stay because that's where the wisdom is in what the advisor gives you as advice. So you as an advisor should be giving advice to your clients. To do that, you're listening, you know that. And today we're going to talk about how that shows up. So let's go back to that conversation I just asked you about, the one that was difficult for you. I'm going to discuss each of these barriers and how these show up in us. And I want you to think about that conversation in mind that you just thought about and which of these 7 showed up. Sometimes more than one shows up, and on a really bad day, they may all 7 show up. So a perfect score. But let's start with fear. A lot of times we push against things because we have fear of where it's going. So as a leader and advisor, often you may fear showing vulnerability. You're new to it. There's a lot of changeover in the world right now. You're a new broker for them. You're a new advisor. You've got something new to share with them. and to accept that you may have an error in judgment, that you have to go back and tell them, whoops, sorry, I made a mistake, or I wasn't listening. I think you said this, but did you mean this? Being humble gives your audience a sense of belonging and freeness. If you can be humble with your employer, those are the best stories, right? Where you made that connection with somebody, where you really understood them. So if you can step outside of your fear, or even look at it and recognize it as fear and be transparent, you can share information with others much easier. A lot of times as advisors, employers call us and look, I'm here to give you advice on which benefits are best for you or which strategies might work best for you, but your problems are not my problems. Meeting a customer's needs, truly meeting a customer's needs, requires that we do entertain that their problems are our problems, right? So we find the why. You have to look for the why and find the we in this. So it's a problem. It's why do they see it as a problem? How can we help? Or where are we in this problem? Why did they think they had to call me about this? So that's sometimes you're putting the block up about, this isn't my problem. I don't know how I can help them, but why did they feel they need to call you? Maybe you are building that empathy. Maybe you are that resource to them, or maybe they do see it as your problem. And you need to ask that, where do I fit into this problem, and how did we get here that this is now my problem? Okay. Poor choice of words. The dictionary is expanding every day. This is one that I challenge myself with all the time. I want to say the right things to people. A poor choice of words, especially coming from leaders or those that are giving advice, can affect morale. There's you can look it up, but there's 3 top words not to use when you're giving advice or in leadership. Okay, the 3 top words that we shouldn't use, and we often use, and I use myself, are words like obviously, always. I can hear that with my husband, my spouse. I can hear me always saying, you always, and should. Obviously, always, and should are 3 words when you are advising, coaching, assisting a customer that are probably not good words. Should is a difficult one because we often use it to make recommendations on the word should. Sometimes it's better to find a way to ask, will this work? What about this instead? So stop using buzzwords and jargon and quick fix words, even the ones you'll find in some of my presentation. When you're building that empathy with someone, use the words that work for you as a person to talk to that person. And I do encourage you also, when you have difficult conversations with employees, to use assertive language versus aggressive language. So be honest and direct, be empathetic, and be aware of what they need, but don't be aggressive in your language, and use inclusive words rather than instructions. Okay, so that's how you can get around the poor choice of words. Use more inclusive words rather than instruct them like should. What can we do here? Would this be an opportunity to do this? Would you think this would work? What are 3 things between us we could come up with? I recently took some training in the High Conflict Institute on how to speak to people in high conflict situations. Lawyers will tell you that when trainers go out to teach on this, they often ask lawyers this question, and they say that 90% of the people that they defend in court are people with high conflict personalities, because they are difficult to communicate the message and do not want to typically mediate unless you can figure out how to communicate with them. Okay, so that's the lawyer world. So a little grace for them in the lawyer world about having to deal with the behavioral concept. Okay, back to your conversation. If you are unhealthy internal competition, you're an advisor, you're in a market, it's a competitive market. You are responding to someone in regards to something because the customer's just told you that someone else is offering them something different. And you might have, with your own work group, your own group of peers, an unhealthy internal competition going on. The rat race often makes us feel like we're not good enough, right? Competition is good. We know that. That's in the sports world genre. Competition fuels energy, it's action, it's persistence to get things done. It can also cause people to be selfish, angry, and conflicted. I guess I'm on the lawyer topic because I just thought of the series Netflix and the Lewis Litt situation in that, if you remember it. It can often cause rifts in teams and sometimes intense disappointment to people, right? If you feel during a conversation with someone that there's a competitive factor showing up for yourself, you've likely stopped listening. You're already on the defense and planning your words in your head to respond. You're going to hear me say the stop listening phrase a lot. It's something I have to work on myself. And I've only ever seen success in providing empathetic approaches when I'm not trying to solve the problem in my head. Okay. So that leads me to the poor listening. One of the most important skills for effective leadership is to be a good listener. Sometimes it can be a matter of perception. I'll use my spouse example again. He always says I pick the other side. I say to him, I always will because it helps me get to your side. But he's not hearing that. He's just hearing I'm on the other side. So he says I'm a poor listener to him. And I probably am. And I need to work on that. But listening demonstrates respect. We know it demonstrates concern and openness, new ideas, right? If we stop trying to find a solution and we listen to other people's solution, it sparks ideas. Bitcoin, which led me in here, which nobody would ever put the two together, but ICD World did. They put the two of us together back to back. I just learned something new. And we're actually talking about the same thing, what you as an advisor can do to hear what your client needs. So poor listening, if you don't hear that the financial impact of what is going on out there, if you can't hear that that's why it's tough for this client to put more money into their benefits, if you're not hearing that, you're probably not listening. So you may want to ask more questions. To patiently hear, you need to take feedback seriously. Okay, so to hear someone, you have to be patient. You can't respond right away when they give you feedback. You have to recognize also that if you're forming an answer in your head when someone is talking, and we do it every day, I do it every day, everybody does it every day, you're probably stopped listening. We're conditioned to do that every day because we're to click our phones, listen, provide response, and be busy working to get the stuff done in the hours that we do. And then a lot of us start second and third shifts between families. Okay, so, but if you take a few minutes to listen and not respond, you'll actually get through the problem quicker. Applying judgment. Judgment's a big one in leadership and advisement because they're asking you what your opinion is, right? So judgment leaders make decisions based on negative assumptions. So if you're judging someone, it's typically on a negative assumption. There's a great quote in a book called The 9 Cardinal Building Blocks. The 9 Cardinal Building Blocks is the name of the book. And it says, when we generalize and judge people quickly without taking ample time, we've chosen a shortcut. It's superficial for all of us and it lacks wisdom. So when we generalize and judge, and we do that all the time, we've taken a shortcut in trying to understand them. We've stopped listening and we're applying judgment before we know the whole story. We often do that in our world of homelessness versus where we may live because we think it's a them against us type environment. We may sympathize, but we don't really empathize with them. And that's the kind of world where we have to pull back from judgment and say, how does that affect me? How is that problem my problem, maybe in a more social structure? So you're back in that conversation and you're frustrated because you maybe are a new advisor or you've got a new book of business and you don't have a solution to their problem. And you've always been a solution person. You always like to find solution. So, but you don't have one. And that's what was frustrating you when I asked you to think about it. So problems are going to keep cropping up in life. We know this. We're humans. They're going to keep coming. You feel you can't contribute, though, unless you find a solution. But we get trapped in an endless cycle of poor solutions, leading to more poor solutions. I can tell you in my own group, we've come through some terrific exercises lately on solutions, 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 or solutions. Let's try again. So not having a solution when all we do all day is go out and give solutions, to not have a solution inside makes us feel like we're not doing well at our job. We don't have a lot of understanding about ourselves. So we can't be afraid to ask, what can we do here? What we're doing isn't working, while others will be trying to tackle the signs of concern, the fix it mode, do better. Your priority will be understanding the why. Sit back and try to understand the why. We don't have to contribute every day. You need to manage the solution, whatever it is comes when you get to it. You don't always have to find that solution. Okay. I hope that helped kind of make you understand maybe where you sit more often in one or two of those or other than the others. But I want you to know who you are in the room. We work through something different, can show up every day. Just try to listen to the narrative in your head when the concern arises and put yourself in their shoes. Okay. That kind of leads me into the empathy, the word empathy. Empathy is a word, as Marty said, it's gained a lot of currency in the workplace lately. We typically think about it in the simplest terms, as I just said, walking a mile in someone else's shoes, or if you're a bit of a cynic, it's stepping into someone else's shoes and trying to sell them another pair. So you're just trying to understand what it is they need so you can sell them something more. That'll get you somewhere, but it won't get you all the way. Okay. So I want to clarify too, there's many types of empathy that we talk about and they get mixed up when we're running through the word empathy. There's cognitive, which is engaging with or to understand thoughts, emotions, and perspectives of the people you're servicing. There's affective, where you're sharing in or showing similarity to their emotional state. And then there's behavioral, where the actions that communicate or demonstrate a sense of empathy. And we're going to work on the behavioral one for the advisors to be able to change the business landscape and use it effectively and honestly in a way that can help you with your clients. Some of you already know what I'm talking about. You can see the examples. You've never said to yourself you're an empathetic person, but you probably just recognized you are because, hey, that's who I am with my clients. So in behavioral empathy, the actions to communicate and demonstrate a sense of empathy, all three of these will play a role to drive the business change, but behavioral empathy is particularly impactful. When organizations or employers demonstrate an understanding and a compassion through what they do, their actions, it always fosters positive relationships with their employees, or for yourself with your customers, and with all the stakeholders because they trust them. This in turn makes you have loyal customers, employee satisfaction, and overall business success. And I believe empathy makes you challenge your own prejudices and opens you up to bigger opportunities. We're always our hardest critic in pretty negative ways. We always say the negative stories to ourselves. There are ways to say, could I have done better? Instead of, you're a loser, you shouldn't have done that. You should be saying to yourself, could I have done better? What would have gone better today? What could I reach out and say to that client that I meant to say, but it really maybe didn't go that way? And how can I demonstrate that now going forward? And behavioral empathy isn't just giving currency to the event, meaning don't just send gifts and things like that. It's actually showing up when it matters and making the message mean something. It may mean the difference between sending an email and making a phone call about a personal situation or event that went wrong. That can be empathetic. And I don't mean an employer situation, but maybe you read, because you live in the community, that something happened to that individual, that family, and reaching out and saying, I saw what happened. I know this is difficult. And I know that we're business partners, but I wanted to let you know I was thinking about you. Is there anything I could do to help? To me, that's behavioral empathy. You don't have to do the help. It may be just letting them know you're present. You won't get weary on the compassion side. That's more the cognitive and affective behavior. Okay, let's bring it into the business realm now a bit. Back to my how did we get here? Understanding empathy in the workplace. My teams all have heard this story before, but I like to tell it because I think it builds where empathy in the workplace shows up, where it started from. We have an employer group that the HR called because the individual had shown up at a discipline matter, and at that discipline matter, this individual in a sub-lead position, so a sub-supervisor role where they are had been disciplined the third time, and he was extremely frustrated, and he told with his manager present in the HR that he was going off work and this place is what's causing his illness. The HR called me right away, was standing in a little bit of the judgment place, and said, going to go off on sick leave. We don't think he's sick. We've disciplined him 3 times. He used to be a really great supervisor, but in the last 8 months, he's not been good. He blows up at everybody. He's had inappropriate conversations with people, and he stormed off the place, and we're not putting up with this anymore. We brought him in to discipline him, and he said he was going off sick and didn't show up for the meeting the next day. I said, okay, I appreciate that. We're managing sick leave disability now because this individual is now on sick leave. Did you want us to follow up? We'll make sure we do that. Our teams here at Acclaim will utilize some of that information when we have that relationship with that employer to find out whether there's anything medical going on that might have affected it. Because when I'm listening from an outside, I heard he used to be a really great supervisor. In the last 8 months, he's been showing up this way. And I've been in my field long enough to know, wonder if there's a medical condition that's showing up. Let's investigate that. So we reach out to the doctor. The doctor clearly indicates that this individual had been seeking help for more of a heart condition, and he was on blood pressure meds. And these blood pressure meds were causing him to be irritable, extremely irritable. The irritable was showing up in his behavior at work. We weren't able to tell the employer that, but when the employee first went off and sent his first note into the doctor to the employer the next day, he was going to be off for 3 months. When we called within a week later, and we spoke to him and found out what was going on, and then we sent reasonable questions to the doctor to ask, is there a history? Could there have been, because he had these situations at work and it sounds like it wasn't there before? The doctor was able to quantify that this individual did have blood pressure problems. The medication was making him irritable. He may not have been the best about following up with his doctor. He'd been on the beds for approximately 8 months, and the doctor had had 3 appointments with him in that time. He was going to now titrate his meds because the employer was able to give an example of the irritability, and that employee was back to work in 4 weeks. We also, because he felt calmer now, we were able to explain to him he's going to have to go in and deal with the discipline issue, but it likely would be pretty minor because it was related to a medical condition, and he should be better able to cope with it like he was in the past. The employer, I gave the HR director a call, explained the situation, and he even said, yeah, I should have asked more questions. I said, yeah, well, you said he used to be a really good supervisor and he feels that way too. This guy returned, he's going to be better at it. So how did we get here? You have to be empathetic in your approach of how you ask the questions. You can't stand in judgment of what's going on. Empathy is everywhere, and you need to utilize it as a way to solve the problems as an advisor. You can use those type of examples to show, hear what's really going on. I recently was reading up on it in preparation for today, and empathy has actually been recognized as one of the key competencies for the future by the European Council. They're writing it into the key competencies in order to run the European Council. I think that's progressive, and I think that they're calling it out is an important fact. Okay, let's take a quick look here at the beneficial benefits of empathy. We certainly know that, as you can tell from the story I just told, the ramifications of that event from a beneficial end would have been longer sick leave. It could have been legal matters, certainly would have been a grievance if it had been a unionized employee that could have led to an arbitration. it could have meant the health of the poor individual could have been worse instead of better had it not been resolved. So there are several ways to reduce the cost, and empathy, that example of empathy, reduce the insurance cost. Empathetic approaches can lead to decreased insurance claims and payouts, as we just said, and ultimately reduce the financial burden of the disability. So having your clients move forward when they bring up stories like that, ask them what's on the other side. It does enhance productivity. Behavioral empathy contributes to improved employee morale and engagement, resulting in a heightened productivity and reduced absenteeism. Dow Chemical back in 2007 said that their absenteeism rate had only risen by 3%, but their presenteeism rate, people showing up at not being able to work because they weren't well, they were able to document that it had risen by 70% in that year. Like, that's incredible. And that's because they couldn't enhance productivity, and they went looking at why people felt they had to come in for their paycheck and they had to take whatever was wrong going on at work because they had to come in for their paycheck. And there was no empathy there, and they felt like they were burning out inside. So it will diminish your legal expenses too. It reduces your costs, it diminishes legal expenses. You do have to be careful how you spend it, how you use empathy. Empathy is essential, and today more than ever it is, because we've come out of some historical things that make us need to reconnect. Lots of tools and innovation out there on how we can get tools and get things done without really talking to somebody. But you do need to be careful how you use empathy, because if you fall out of behavioral, like just being able to communicate and listen and understand, you can fall over into more of compassion and compassion fatigue. But you can also, our workplace becomes more complex and varied nowadays, hybrid, not hybrid, divestitures in businesses, HRs are in other countries. For Canadian groups that we're working with, they don't understand, they're not available, I can only reach them online. To retain, though, and develop the best people, leaders today simply must have the emotional intelligence to read people. And I'm not sure if there are tools out there to do that when HRs are in other places and don't set up a communication system to see their people. I often do coaching for employers for managers, how they can speak to people even in a hybrid working environment, how you can show up for them and how you can make those connections. But you have to be careful. If you are over empathetic, you give too much, you may end up pretty worn out. And that often happens too in your own circle of peers. So you have to be careful when you become a group of people that are all empathizing. And so everybody's supporting everybody else, and everyone's tired from leaning the same way. You sometimes just have to sit back and listen. So there's a couple of case studies I'm going to give you in a bit on empathy integration, on successful empathy integration. Just quickly, the health-related benefits that contribute to fostering empathy: reduce stress-related illnesses. We've already talked about that. Improve mental health and morale. Seems like the obvious one since we're talking about a healthy mind. And greater intent to stay. When employees feel valued and understood, that they're more likely to stay with the organization, allowing implementation of better benefits, right? So if you know your employees are in it for the long haul, and you can see that in the statistical information, or your as an advisor, you can see those employees are that. If the employer can give you that, you might want to look at what type of benefits you're recommending to them. Okay. An empathetic workplace fosters loyalty and commitment among team members. So I'm going to bring you through this in a minute, but I want to show you a couple ideas of where this shows up in case studies of success, what you can actually do tangibly to put empathy in place. So let's start with business C, flexible work arrangements. Business C introduced flexible work arrangements for individuals with health challenges, leading to a higher job satisfaction and a decline in sick leave utilization. So instead of saying, well, we can't do that for one, we can't do it at all, reasonable decisions are made when you do consider different approaches for the same problem. Okay, that's how you get to a resolution. Different approaches for the same problem without getting, you have to have a stop point, but that's the empathetic approach to being able to resolve things. So if you can find flexible work arrangements, that's a great way to do it. Company A said, here's what we want to build, here's what we're running up against. They implemented inclusive policies and empathetic leadership. So they had training for their leaders on how to listen and understand better, and it improved retention rates and decreased overall sick costs. And the last one, the empathy training, is one I came into for a client. Organization B provided empathy training for their managers. It integrated it as part of their absenteeism program, and that's how Acclaim gets into these. We're seeing the end results in the stats. We're able to tell you where most of your people in your groups are going off sick. Even in small groups, we can see the trends that occur and the fallouts that occur in it. And we can see those trends in the absenteeism management. And then when I talk to HRs, I say, well, where do you think the problem is on your team? Well, they don't know how to talk to people. So people just go off and then they never come back, or they come back in the same problems. I said, well, they haven't. The managers aren't empathetic about the person being off. A, they think they're not allowed to talk to them or say anything. And there are different ways you can do that. And you definitely should engage. But B, they're feeling that their hands are tied because they're either on the business side or they're on the employee side. And you can be on both if you do it from an empathetic approach. Okay, so you need to be able to understand what strategies might work as an advisor. It may not be another tool that's for the employee. It may be a tool that's for the business. And if you can offer that inside your benefits package to them, that might be a real easy give on why they continue to be, because you heard where their problems are. Thanks for providing everything for our employees when they do go off, but what do we have to be able to keep them engaged at work? And as I kind of talked about a little bit earlier, challenges in implementing empathy. There are pitfalls, and a good blog to read is the one by Dr. Lois Folker, Folker. She writes a blog called The Challenges of Empathetic Leadership, and she mentions that depending on how it's executed and the person you're dealing with, empathy can come across as manipulation. And I will again go back to my example of suits, because I think in that work environment, you could see where they would go and use empathy to their advantage, but it always backfires. And that creates another episode on a show. So especially if you don't have a track record of being empathetic. So don't just go out there and say, I'm listening. I am here and I'm listening. You actually have to be present in a situation and try it out on yourself first as a listener before you tell them that you're there to listen. Okay, you actually have to see if you can use the empathetic approach as a strategy to do this for their employer, for your employers. Many individuals in the workplace may not be used to having a leader who genuinely cares about their perspective. I'm lucky to work at a place that we absolutely believe that occurs here, and it creates a longevity that people do care. And it's easy for someone to become pessimistic about genuine attempts from leaders, even when good leaders care. Pessimistic feelings will come up because there's a lot that everybody has to give every day. And if you felt that your only way to connect with your leader was to get them to be empathetic to your situation or your cause for your drive forward of your book, you may find that sometimes they come across as pessimistic, but that's something you need to look at on your approach. There's also a chance of you failing to understand what empathy is and how it should be used. We discussed previously being overcaring or sensitive or even emotionally involved. Don't be that way with your clients unless it's something you choose to do. It won't usually end in good benefits, in a good advisor role. It'll usually end in you feeling a little stuck in a situation that you may not be able to move from or increase the value of the product you offer. That comes with the risks, and many people interpret empathy as a weakness. I used to, in my younger years, say, don't mistake my genuineness for personal interest. People would think because I was engaging that I had an interest in them as an individual. I'm genuine in all people. I'm curious. I'm going to ask questions. And as I age, I hope I'm listening better. So those are, you need to overcome bias, you need to manage the workload impact for the employer. Implementing empathy may require additional resources and time to accommodate the employee's needs. So you might want to be talking about resources first as an advisor before you launch the benefit program. You may want to start at the beginning. I have told employers that sometimes they're not ready to change their organizational structure of their sick leave program because their employees aren't listening yet, and they need to go out and build that first before they restructure things where they think it might be a better benefit, because that employee group is only going to see it as you taking something away. So you need to create the listening environment. And you need to be able to measure empathy's impact. So quantifying the influence of empathy on improving disability programs and reducing sick leave costs can be complex. I finished a stats presentation a couple of weeks ago with a group, and at the end of it, they said, "Can we keep you on? We just want to talk through a problem of an individual that keeps showing up on sick leave. It's a problem we're wearing, and we know that, but the manager is now starting to push back, saying, I can't possibly bring them back on another return to work plan." We've been helping this group forever. They said they'd been managing this inside. They hadn't sent it through for managing it all because it had just kept compounding. Of course, the first question I asked them was, well, how did you get here? And when I found out how, I said, is your manager even equipped to have these conversations? Or are you as a leader just directing them that they have to do it this way? And they said, you're right. Let's go back and look to see if he feels that would be helpful. And that's where they're at right now. Okay, so sometimes you may not be able to save that last story, but you can start over with the right questions. The last slide was really the strategies to consider, and there's just two of them, and I'll leave it at that. The first strategy I want you to consider is two simple things: is do you ask your clients how their benefit plans aligns with their corporate values? Okay. Do you just ask them what they need? Do you ask them if they have corporate values? And I don't say this to make employers have corporate values. You may be the type of advisor that finally gets the employer thinking about whether or not that's important in their benefits, and then how that can extend into a more empathetic approach to providing the right benefits. Well, do you want to align it with your corporate benefits? Let's see what you have and what you don't have and see what more needs to be there. It's a great jumping in strategy for understanding what's really needed. And the second one is, have you ever considered coaching services as part of your benefit package for your smaller employer groups? Have you ever considered where to start so that people know how to use it? We talked on the panelist group earlier on today at noon about where does innovation start? It starts with somebody being a bit of an advisor being a bit of an ambassador to people. You know, they need to promote that service. You need to be understanding, what do you need? Oh, that's what you need. Your managers don't even know how to talk to employees about their benefits because they don't know how to have that first conversation. You're probably losing out on a lot of resources that could be used to prove your point of why you suggested them in the first place. So those are the two questions. Do you ask your clients how the benefit plan aligns with their corporate values? And have you ever considered what you need first, such as coaching services, to help the managers be able to use the benefits? And that's it.
Christine, this was first of all, a fantastic presentation, not only from the kind of a advisor perspective, but from a personal perspective about certain behaviors, engaging with people, whether that's your own family members or maybe it's your colleagues, your clients, and listening to that, and a fantastic way to end the day. So I wanted to personally thank you for that, not only for this session, but your contribution to the panel as well. I thought that this was very engaging, and we just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you. We hope our advisors got a lot of information out of Christine's presentation, because I do think that we are navigating. I think we've used that word a lot during the day. Navigating. In fact, my household will tell you it's like the top 3 words that I come home with, and they make fun of me. But navigating is one of them, and being able to look at the world that we're in right now, with the different demographics of people, the different work environments. Are people working from home? Are they at what is their preference? How are we meshing together, and then and being empathetic about that. So thank you so much for the presentation today and your contribution.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
No problem. And to all of, thank you to everybody. So we want to thank all of our advisors, friends, colleagues who took time out of your day to spend with us. We know it was a long day, and this was our 4th annual symposium, and we really appreciate you attending, as well to our presenters today who continually collaborate with us on important topics and ideas, as well as initiatives. And we really appreciate your support and your attendance and the ongoing collaboration that you have with us. Over the last little while, we've been attending events and webinars with really interesting topics and important issues. But what we want to do is to ensure that our team, or IDC Win Workplace Solutions, closes the loop on the content that we're providing and ensuring that we have a call to action to come back to you and your clients with. We don't want to leave you hanging. We don't want there to be gaps. We want to take a full circle approach and show that the information that we provided is giving you back the education, the tools, the resources, and things that you need and that we can help you with. So for instance, if it's the hot topics that we presented, like group savings plans and employees wanting information including, and happens to be very popular today, the Bitcoin conversation and how that's going to be incorporated maybe in the future in total rewards packages. We want to make sure you know where to go to get that. How AI will change the conversation and the need to keep the human element intact. That's going to be key as well. Understanding what empathy really means and how we need to incorporate that in the workplace. The controversial, actually, red button issues like obesity drugs and the impact to all stakeholders. Where are you going to get that information? How are you going to communicate that information? How can we help you do that? And do you have the necessary tools and resources to make that happen? We are in, I think, there's a poll, so let me just get this back. I didn't see it pop up. But we are in a stage in benefits right now where we need to take a whole health benefits approach, and we need to converge their employees' personal needs, employers' objectives, uncover the pain points, and incorporate innovation. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to do that together? Our goal is not to leave you hanging. That we close the loop, that we provide those tools that can help you and have those that you can have those conversations with your clients. In our quest for humanizing benefits, and I will continue to say in any webinar that we do here, that it's one thing to put in a benefit plan or a retirement plan, but it's another to put in the right one. And our goal as a team, coast to coast, is to help you every step of the way. So I want to take the opportunity. I'm going to ask David if he wants to come up from backstage to see if he has any closing remarks. But I want to take the opportunity to thank the advisors and everybody who stayed on all day for this. I really hope that you found it beneficial and that you can reach out to us anytime for any help and support that you might need. So with that, unless David has any comments that he wants to come up here with, I'm going to say thank you so much. Oh, here he is.
And just take the opportunity to thank everybody again. I think today's sessions exceeded our expectations in many ways. We're really pleased to put this forum together. We hope that the thought leadership of the people that we bring into these sessions to present to you is helpful. Again, our industry is changing rapidly, and being able to harness a sense of that change, I think, is a differentiator for advisors, and we're happy to facilitate where we can. So thanks everyone for attending.